Hey guys, it's Mandy. Welcome to my channel. So last year, every month, I went over my finances in detail, sharing every dollar that went into the rent house account and then every expense that went out of the account. However, to just be honest with you, it's kind of awkward to share your finances in that much detail. So I'm going to change up the format just a bit. I think that this will be just as useful, but not as uncomfortable for me. I'm going to just straight up share the maintenance requests that I have each month, how much they cost, and what tools and how I address them basically. So this month in January, I had 5 maintenance requests. 4 of them were from one house, and then the 5th one was from a different house. That's how it typically is. Like one house will cause problems for a little bit, and then it won't cause problems again for 2 years. This particular house, the first request that she sent in was that the deck boards needed replaced on like the big second story deck. This house does have 2 deck areas. It has one really big deck and then it has like a smaller porch. Here's some pictures of what the deck looked like. Yes, it does look pretty bad. I have actually replaced decking boards myself in the past, and so I thought, well, I can probably do this myself. I get over there and it looks like quite a big job. That you can see there's a lot of boards that need replaced. So I called the guy who normally does my parents' lawn care at our house. And since it's off season right now, he normally looks for like side jobs that he can do in between. I pay him $25 an hour. So here's the deck after we completed it. The deck boards treated lumber right now is just ridiculously expensive. So for a large box of exterior screws and for 11 pieces of decking ranging in sizes from 8 feet to 16 feet, it was $125 for the lumber and the box of exterior screws, which is just crazy. Like that's so expensive. And so altogether, $366 was the price to repair that deck. Here are my tips, what I have learned about replacing deck boards. So the first time I ever replaced a deck board myself, it was just one board, and I struggled so hard. It took me over an hour to get that board out of the deck. Even though it was rotted, even though the screws were like rotted in there, I could not get that board out. The main reason was because all I had was a drill and a hammer, and my drill I couldn't get the screws out. They were so far down embedded in the wood, I couldn't get the screws out with the drill. And then I really couldn't pry that board out with just my hammer. I had to break the board all up, and it was so hard. Well, since then, I have learned that you really need to have a pry bar. I bought a pry bar, and it makes a crazy difference. So what you need to do is you need to try to remove any screws you can with your drill. And then whatever you can't remove, that's fine. You just wedge your pry bar under there and you pop that board out. Especially if you can get out about half or 3/4 of the old screws. If you can get those out, that board should pop out pretty easily. Sometimes you may need to use your hammer to knock the pry bar in further, but for the most part, it pops out pretty well. I think you need to get a pry bar that's about 2.5 feet long, maybe 2 feet would be long enough. Anything shorter than that, you may not have enough leverage, but it doesn't have to be super long. The super long ones are pretty expensive. I would say just at least 2 feet long, and you should be good. But if you have a pry bar and you have a drill, you should be able to get those old rotted boards out pretty easily. And also, here's my drill. It's just a drill from Walmart. I don't know if it's a particularly good drill or not. I've had it for 2 years and I've been able to do anything I needed to do with it. This is just what I went to Walmart. I stood in front of the drill section looking really confused. A man came and asked me if I needed help, and I said yes. Which drill should I buy? And he told me this one. And then my last tip that I'm going to give you about replacing deck boards is which type of screws to buy. So the first time I replaced deck boards, I bought these exterior screws. And these are fine. They work. If you already have some of these, they're fine. They are Phillips head, and so you just need number 2 Phillips drill bit like that, and they're fine. They work well. What I have found though is that my drill bit wants to slip out of these, even if I put all of my weight into the drill, at the end, I'll still have some trouble getting the screw all the way down into the wood just a bit because my drill bit will start wanting to slip out at the end. And I'm just not strong enough to hold it all the way in there. So this time, we bought a different kind of screw, these. And this has a what's called, I guess, a combo head. You can use a square bit or you can use a Phillips head. And the Phillips head fits in there, works well, but, and this is a game changer, y'all. This made it so easy. You can use a square bit and it fits in there really tight, really well. It does not slip out. I had to be careful that I wasn't going too far into the wood and I didn't have to put any weight into it. It just made it so much easier. So I highly recommend these screws. It was like night and day difference. The second maintenance request was that her sliding glass door, also on the second floor, somehow the strike plate had disappeared. It looks like this, and just basically the little hook, the little latch on the sliding glass door lock, it pops under there, and so it's locked. That part had disappeared. Really weird because it was there when she first moved in. I promise. I check all these locks. Even she said it was there when she moved in. So I don't know what happened to it. I couldn't find a replacement for that in stores anywhere. I went to Lowe's, I went to Home Depot, couldn't find one, but I ordered one off Amazon and it was $9. It was really easy to install that because the holes from the old one were still there. So basically, I just screwed it in and it was on there really tight. I didn't need longer screws or anything like that. The third thing was she asked me to clean her gutters. So I cleaned the gutters. Obviously, that doesn't cost anything. I just climbed up on the roof, swept off the roof, and then I was done. The only reason I'm even mentioning cleaning the gutters is because the fourth problem is a couple days after I had been at her house, after we replaced the decking boards and I cleaned the gutters, she called and said that the fan on her heat pump was not working. So this is what you would refer to as like the AC unit or the condenser, the outside unit. If you have a heat pump during the winter when the furnace is on, that heat pump, the fan is still going to be going. If you don't have a heat pump, that outside unit will only be on when you're cooling the house. So it's 7 o'clock at night. I can't really call somebody to come out right then. What you should do if you are in that same situation and you have a heat pump is you should tell your tenant to switch the thermostat to emergency heat. It will bypass that outside unit. They will still have the house heated. It will just bypass the outside unit. What will happen is if you continue to heat the house using the heat pump, the outside unit, without the fan working, is it could overheat the unit and burn up the motor. Obviously, let's just throw this out there. I don't know that much about heat and air, so I may be saying some things that are technically incorrect. So feel free to correct me down in the comments. Heat and air is one of the things I know the least about. So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. But when she told me the fan wasn't working, I thought, oh, that's like a really strange coincidence that I just cleaned out the gutters. I bet I got a stick down into that unit or something. I bet I got debris in there and blocked off the fan where it can't turn. So I told her that. I was like, I bet this is my fault. Let me come out really early tomorrow morning and look at it. If I can't get it working, then I'll call the heat and air guys. So I went out, cleaned the unit really well. It still wouldn't work. Now, they told me that they get a lot of calls like this in the winter, and it's just that the heat pump is in defrost mode. So, what happens is when it first kicks on, the fan won't start turning because it will be in defrost mode. Well, I was like, I don't know if that's what's happening here. I think it's really not working right. How long would it take in defrost mode? And then he said up to 20 minutes. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna wait 20 minutes. I'll call you back. So I wait 20 minutes and it's still, the fan never kicks on. Now, if I take a stick and I push the blades, then they will start working and everything works fine until it cuts back off and then tries to come on again, then the fan won't start again. So to me, that sounded like a capacitor issue. Like I said, know nothing about heat and air, but I have replaced capacitors in ceiling fans where the blades stop turning, but if you pushed the blades with your hand, then they would start working fine. So that's a burnt capacitor usually. And when I called the heat and air guy back, I was like, it seems like it's a capacitor problem. Like, what do you think? And he was like, yeah, it could be. It really could be. So he sent out his technician guy, I don't know. And uh, right away, as soon as he took the back off of the unit, he was like, "Oh yeah, the capacitor's burnt up." So he let me keep it. This is the capacitor. I have no idea how he knows that it was bad. I really should have asked him, but like he was there for like 10 minutes. He pulled this old one out and put a new one in, and $207 later, everything was working. So that's all the issues with the first house. Now, the second house, the tenants actually messaged me on Facebook. They sent me several pictures of their crown molding, and they said that the crack at the top of the molding was getting worse. And they were concerned that it may be a structural problem. So I do not think this house has any structural issues. The house was built in like 1950 or maybe like early 1960s. I'm not exactly sure on the date, but it is one of the older houses that we have. And it's brick. There aren't really any concerning cracks in the brick anywhere. And then under the house, it looks in really good shape. All the pillars are in good condition. Nothing looks cracked. Nothing looks messed up. And in the house, there are just a few little, like, very small cracks along the door, around some of the door frames. I think there's two cracks actually. Two door frames have little cracks going out, but that's really, really common. There's not much gap to them. There's not much width there. It's just a very thin little hairline crack, and that's very common in older houses. Houses do settle, so some settling is expected, and it's not that much of a cause for concern. Now, with the crown molding, what happens is houses just do expand and contract naturally, especially with the seasons. In winter, it's drier, so the wood will shrink and cracks will appear. Well, they will be bigger. In winter, cracks will get bigger, and then in summer, the wood will swell a little bit and the cracks will get smaller. So they were right, that crack probably was bigger, and that is kind of to be expected in the winter. So the only thing that I can really do to help this cracking situation is I can buy a better quality caulk, one that has some type of elasticity to it, and hopefully it can stretch and contract with the house, and you won't have that breakage in the caulk and that gap. So I went and I bought this big stretch. It's the only caulk that I could find in my area that said that it had some elasticity to it. I think it was around $8 for this. It may have been a little bit less, but I bought a couple tubes of this caulk, and you guys probably know how to apply caulk, but 2 years ago I didn't know anything about it. So I'm going to tell you, for those of you that were like me 2 years ago and don't know how to apply caulk. So here's your tube of caulk, and what you're going to do is you're going to take a utility knife and you're going to cut the tip of it off, depending, and this, you're going to cut a really small piece off if you want a very thin bead of caulk, and you're going to cut a bigger piece off if you want a thick bead of caulk. And then you're going to cut it at an angle so that the caulk will apply nice and smooth and even. Then, which, guys, the first time I ever picked up a bottle of caulk, I cut the tip off, and I thought that's all I had to do, and I put it back in this caulk gun, and I started pumping like crazy, and it was not coming out. It would not come out. And I am obviously not that smart, so I just pump that gun harder, and it starts coming all out the back. I made a humongous mess, and the problem is that there is a seal in here. You you can't see it, but it's like down in the bottle. There's a seal, and that is what this little pin is for. And you push that down into the caulk after you cut the top off. Push it all the way down, and it breaks the seal. Now the caulk's ready to be used. So you load it into your gun. These caulk guns are like $3.50. They're very, very cheap. And then you start pumping. And you're just gonna line this up with your gap, whatever you're filling, and you're just gonna go as smooth and steady as you can, trying to get that bead of caulk nice and smooth and consistent. If the gap is bigger in some areas, you'll have to adjust and do like put a little more caulk there. And then you're going to have a wet rag with you, a rag that you don't care about, because once you get caulk on fabric, it's not going to come out. So you should probably also wear clothes you don't care about. And that wet rag, you're going to use that to wet your finger, and you are going to just very, very gently and lightly, you're going to press along that bead of caulk that you put up there. And when you press, that's going to flatten it out and make the seal with whatever it is that you're caulking, if it's your bathtub, around your bathtub, or if it's, in my case, it was crown molding. And then anywhere that you made a mess, because messes happen, you're going to take your wet rag and you're going to wipe it up, wipe up the excess. And I will actually link the first YouTube video that I watched when I was learning how to caulk for the first time. I will link that video down in the description. I do not use that painter's tape technique anymore, but I did use it the first time that I caulked a bathtub, and it did turn out really nice. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think about the new format. I will try to document any maintenance and repairs that I do from this point forward, to document them really well, taking good pictures and that kind of thing. It's hard for me to remember to do stuff like that, but I will try my best. See you next time. Bye.